Hey everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Ginger Webb. Welcome to the show, Ginger.
Thanks so much, Mason.
Definitely. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
I almost want to say maybe the last time we saw each other, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say, if I'm memory serves correctly, the Good Medicine Confluence, which was probably like in 2015 or something.
It was in Durango. I remember talking to you in the cafeteria.
That's right. Exactly. Well, right on. Well, let's get to know Ginger a bit more. Ginger, what were you like as a kiddo? Have you always been into plants?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was really shy and I read a lot of books, and I would spend time in our backyard backed up to the woods in New Jersey. And so I would spend time in the woods, but I would spend time in the woods cleaning up the woods. So I was the kid who would sweep the leaves and make little ground forts. But yeah, I was kind of like, I would clean up my best friend's room.
Wow.
And I would go clean up the woods, and I would read a lot of books. I made stuff too. I was very crafty. So I wasn't particularly into gardening, but I was into the wild stuff. And I remember even as a really small child, my mom had given me a magazine that talked about making a violet leaf salad. And somehow I knew what violet leaves were. And I went back in the woods and harvested some and tried them. And, for a little child's palate, it didn't really work, but I vividly remember doing that.
That's so cool. When did you go from being a shy kid to teaching herbalism and whatnot? When did you make that transition to say more of your ability to do public speaking and whatnot?
Oh my gosh. Well, I still take the summer off because I need a little downtime. So I don't know when I made that transition from being shy to not being so shy, but just, we age out of things a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. I was a super shy kid as well. Very afraid of talking to anybody really. And now I do this for a living. So yeah.
Here you are. Yeah.
It's very, I'm very thankful to get to do this at this point. But when did you start really getting into herbalism, and who were some of your early mentors?
I kind of stumbled upon herbalism, I would say 30 years ago. It was while I was working in the environmental movement in Europe, and somebody just told me about it. I was like, wow, that sounds so cool. And when I came back to the States, I just dove in. And so I would say some of my first class I ever took was with Robin Rose Bennett at the Open Center in New York City. That was the first class. Hi, Robin. Wow. And then, I worked in a little herb store in New York City before I moved back to Austin, where I had lived before. And in Austin, I started working at the American Botanical Council. Seven Song used to come down to Austin every once in a while. So I studied with him several times in those first few years. And it wasn't until 1999 that I kind of checked out all sorts of different books and herbalists that I heard of. And I decided to go study with Michael Moore. So that's where I went in 1999, was study with Michael, and the rest is history after that. Right. So that just set me solidly on my path.
Totally. Yeah, those are some amazing teachers you had right there. Do you have any, say, Michael Moore stories or lessons you want to share?
Michael Moore stories. I feel like I channel Michael all the time, and my students always say that they can really, really feel his energy through me. I remember one time he was teaching a suppository class, and those suppositories that come in those long plastic strips, and he lay them over his shoulders as if they were what do you call them? Like bullet casings or whatever. Michael was famous for, we didn't really go on herb walks. We would go, he would take us on wildcrafting trips, and he would pull his van over to the side of the road and walk about, 15 feet into the woods and sit down, and we would sit there for like an hour and talk about the plants. So that was the kind of the beginning. Whenever people think that, I'm taking them on an herb hike or something like that, I'm like, it's barely an herb walk. It's more like an herb shuffle. You never get very far. But Michael we would just all plop down right there in the woods and sit and talk for a long time. So he was a really great teacher and was able to really bring to life the plants as he spoke about them, so that you really felt like you had a sense of them, even though you weren't sitting with them, even if we were just looking at a picture on the screen. And he was also really amazing at talking about physiology and helping us understand physiology.
Yeah, you said herb shuffle, and I'm thinking more herbalists need to start calling those herb shuffles, because you're right. Yeah, you don't really
Right.
make it too far too often. So, well, thanks for sharing.
Right.
I always love hearing about Michael. He seemed like such a character. I never had a chance to meet him, but very good. Yeah, and those were my favorite memories when I took the Columbine School of Botanical Studies, is when we would just go in the woods, and then we'd sit with somewhere in the old growth forest, and basically they would give lecture for the next hour or so. And I was like, I always treasure those moments where you just get the lecture deep in the woods. But so you've been an herbalist for 30 years now. I'm curious, how have you seen the herbalism or herbal community evolve and change over the years?
Well, what I've noticed is that back when I first started, I feel like I kind of knew who all the herbalists were, or at least, a large subsection of them, subset of them. And now, there's so many of us. There's so many of us, and it's so wonderful. So that's one thing I've seen, is that there really are a lot of people that are identifying as herbalists and doing good work out there. What else have I noticed? I mean, I do notice one of the reasons so I have a school called Sacred Journey School of Herbalism. And one of the things that I thought of before I started my program was, it's a 200-hour program, because I didn't like what I was seeing with small classes, like really short little classes, like one evening here or 3 parts here, was that I felt like people walked away feeling like they knew something, but not knowing what they didn't know. And so I wanted to create a program that would enable people to have, I know what the basics are. Let me teach you all the foundational stuff. And then when you go forth, you will have everything you need. You will have a strong foundation, because what I saw, and I still see out there, is people who obviously know stuff and are extremely passionate about herbalism and herbs and are excited, but I see the pieces that are missing. I see this a lot with medicine making, like on Instagram. I'll see people, demonstrating with some pretty music in the background how to make a tincture. Like, that tincture ain't strong at all. Like, you did not put enough herb in there. So that's kind of one of the negative things I see. But what I do see a lot of is more people really, really interested in it. And I love seeing that. I love seeing that people are making their own medicines and loving the plants and protecting the plants. So those are a couple things that I've seen over the 30 years.
I want to say this is episode 52, and I've barely scratched the surface of who I want to talk to. So you're right. I feel like you're right. The herbal community has grown quite a bit, which would be a good thing. So you're saying maybe like the stuff you're seeing on Instagram is just very surface level, and you'd like to see people take it a bit deeper. Do you view maybe potentially that's like a gateway into, it's a positive thing in the sense that it could get people into herbalism and then maybe want to take their studies further?
Well, I think what I see is that, I think it's really, it does a disservice to the plants when you don't make a medicine very strong. I'm not talking like, you have to make it mega, super duper duper strong. It's just like strong enough, right? Because then, you can try it and the medicine doesn't work and you think, oh, that herb doesn't work. But so that's just like one little, it's just kind of like a little pet peeve that I see, and it worries me. Yeah. But what I also see is I see a lot of people just like, I just got back from the Good Medicine Confluence up in Colorado. Yeah. And it just is so amazing to hear so many amazing herbalists speak and share, what they're working on. And I'm always humbled by the classes that I go to, because there's just some really amazing people doing really good stuff out there. So yeah, I don't need to just like mention the weird Instagram stuff. there's a lot of fascinating people doing good work.
I'm sure it's a pet peeve of a lot of herbalists when they see that. Do you ever Do you ever feel compelled to comment on those posts? Or do you
Oh, do I? I try not to be that person. You know, I
That's
try not
fair.
to be that person.
You let your work do the talking. I actually didn't know you went to the Good Medicine Confluence. Did you teach? And either way, what was your experience like?
Well, it was great. I loved it. And part of, like I said, I went to a lot of really great talks and got to hang out with some people that I haven't seen in a few years. I did not teach this year.
Nice.
And that really is from a decision that I made because I teach all year long. I mean, I teach from September to May. And, you know, you brought it up. I was that shy, quiet child, and I need my summers to recoup. So I made a decision a couple of years ago. I told Wolf and Kiva, I was like, I'm sorry, I cannot teach during the summer. I need my time off. So yeah, I got to go as a participant. And that was really nice.
That's the best. You know, I don't know if I've ever actually attended as a participant. I don't teach at the events, but for years I would attend, you know, representing Mountain Rose Herbs and whatnot. And I'm finally going back. I'm finally going back to an herbal event here in September called the Great Lakes Herb Fair in Michigan, which I'm really excited about. But again, I'm not going to be a participant because we're going to represent Herb Rally this time, but I'm sure it'll still be a relaxing and super fun time to hang out with everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fun either way, but it's really just kind of a little bit of a boundary that I had to think about, like really what is best for my self-care. It's really having this downtime to focus on things that are, you know, it's like, I feel like all year is an exhale. I'm out with my students. I'm face forward, you know, teaching and thinking about them all the time. And so just to take those 3 months during the summer to not be doing that and just be kind of focusing on myself and taking care of things that are more, you know, behind the scenes and self-care and not being on a schedule and things like that. So obviously I'm still working in the summer, but I'm just not doing that out in the public kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure it rejuvenates you and makes you a better teacher when it's teaching time. I do want to get to your school here soon, but I'm curious, are you optimistic about the future of herbalism?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the people that come through my program, I mean, they give me hope all the time. And I see the amount of dedication and concern for the environment and love for the plants and love for community and care. I mean, people care so much. And so when I'm able to provide that guidance of teaching people the plants that grow around us, teaching people how to use them, teaching people about kind of like, I don't want to say alternative ideas of health, but different paradigm of health than what mainstream medicine provides. I see it just waking people up and getting people excited. And I think that's amazing. And I've got a lot of young people coming through the program that have tons of energy and are out there in their various communities doing really great stuff. So I'm very hopeful. I mean, I think that this is, we look at the modern medicine system here in this country, and not trying to go down some terrible rabbit hole about that, but, you know, we just all got to help each other in different ways. And I think that actually in some strange way, not really having access to the mainstream medicine is there's a silver lining in that, which is that, you know, you don't end up going to the doctor to get an antibiotic when you don't really need it. You know, you start practicing self-care and home care and having people in your household help you take care of yourself. And this is actually it's a silver lining of not having good access, not to make it Pollyanna, anything like that about not having access to medical care, but it's like some of the medical care is not that great. So, you know, the more we can take that into our own hands, you know, the fact that we kind of have to take that into our own hands, there is a silver lining in that.
Yeah, I've never really heard it put that way, but that's a really good point. Drawing more people to the self-care if they don't have access to, you know, say traditional Western medicine or whatnot. But I did want to say
community care, you know, yeah,
mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
In preparation for this interview, I was perusing your Instagram account or your school's Instagram account, and it really does look like y'all have a lot of fun, and it just brought back a lot of great memories of being in herb school. And you're right, everyone just looks so enthusiastic and stoked and everything. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about Sacred Journey Herb School? Did I get that right? Sacred Journey Herb School.
Sacred Journey School of Herbalism, which
All right, there
is
you
a
go.
it's a bit of a mouthful. But it really came to me, the name of the school really came to me when I realized that, what I was doing with herbs really was a sacred journey, where it really is about a deep, deep connection to everything. And that moving, it's again, the paradigm shift of moving out of everything I would say that's been indoctrinated into our lives, and shifting out of that into out into the, I don't know how to say that, out into the light, out into the woods, out into the plants, out into the meadow, out into the, seeing things in a different way. So the school, I really started it in earnest. I was teaching here and there a lot through the years, but I really started the school in earnest about 11 years ago. And again, like I said, I really wanted to create not just little classes here and there, but just a whole foundational program. Now, when I went to Michael Moore's school in Arizona, that was a 500-hour program, and that was residential and from January to June. And so people, I had to move to Arizona to do it. And I knew that, a lot of my demographics, a lot of the people that knew me here in Austin and Central Texas were people who had jobs, who had families, were not going to be able to necessarily, study full time the way we did when we were at Michael's. So I just created a program that matched my lifestyle. I had a small child, or a young child at the time. And so it was like, one night a week, and then on every other Saturday or something like that. So I created a program that enabled people to continue with their regular work weeks and work schedules and family life or whatever other commitments they had, but still managed to do something long-term and, with a certain amount of depth. Again, it's 200 hours versus 500 with Michael, but we still do cover quite a bit. And again, my intention has always been just to provide the everything foundational that you need. So we cover all aspects of medicine making and do that. Wildcrafting, as well as a little bit of cultivation and things like that. We cover the tastes and impressions. We do botany. We do a lot of keying out and using the field guides, but we actually also do teach them keying out, even though we use a small key that's just for this region. But it does give you that flavor of how to do it. The key for Texas is actually really huge and very cumbersome, and it's a big state. So we don't actually use, I'm not going to make them buy it. It's, $500 book, but we spend a lot of time outdoors. I'd say more than half of the time we're outdoors. It's about 75 hours online and an interactive Zoom class, which of course used to be in person, but since COVID, it's now on Zoom, and that works well for people who, don't live in town.
Right.
And then 125 hours outdoors. And so we've cultivated relationships with, even in Texas, we don't really have a lot of public land, but I've cultivated relationships with landowners over the years. So we have access to wild land and are able to go explore different eco regions in Central Texas to see what different plants are growing where. So I really want people to walk away feeling like they, when they walk out their front door, they get to see all sorts of little friends growing. They know the names of plants. They know who they are and what they feel like and how to use them as medicine. And really, it's for people to really fall in love with the plants. And that seems to be what happens. What I usually witness is a transformation with the students. We start the year reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, which I know we all love that book so much. And it really is such a paradigm shift for people. So it really sets them onto the path really quickly with this different understanding of reciprocity. And just really falling in love with the plants. I have a business. I've been making medicine too since I left Michael's school in 99. So I have a company called Texas Medicinals. And so I know medicine making inside and out because I do that too full time. And so that's actually a really important part of the class as well, is just to make sure that people really know how to make good medicine. And then they can go off and do whatever you want. But I really want to set the stage so that here, this is the standard. You want to make it good and strong and label it correctly and make it correctly. And then, then you can go do whatever you want. But
So your students are helping you make the Texas Medicinals products?
no, it's separate. It's separate. But I'm just saying
Gotcha.
that, like, I have such a strong, it's not even a strong background. I mean, I'm still currently making medicine on a relatively large scale. So I've been doing that quite a while and have perfected, a lot of the systems of how to do that, the procedures, I mean, nothing secret, just
Gotcha.
I know how to do it.
You know how to, yeah, you know your shit. So I do want to talk more about Texas Medicinals, but as far as Sacred Journey, so it sounds like you have like a foundational class. Is there like, say, another advanced class you teach where people could move on, and also do you teach, say, electives and whatnot?
Well, so the main class, like I said, is 200 hours, and that actually can be divided into, so someone can take it from out of state. They can just take the online section, or you can just take the outdoor section. So it could be divided up depending on if you don't live in Central Texas. But yeah, we do have level 2 programs. One is a clinical program that is not nearly as many hours, but it does last that same amount of time from September to May, and we meet 2 or 3 times a month. And so I teach Michael's constitutional physiology theory or system, and we practice that along with drop dosing techniques that I was trying to figure out where I learned it, and I think it's just a conglomerate that I've learned from different teachers along the way. And I do it in my own way, but I suspect I learned a little bit from Seven Song, a little bit from Matthew Wood, and probably some other people. Little drop dose technique of making, like, I choose a bunch of herbs and then try them out on the client. And then we cover a lot of different topics that I've learned from Paul Bergner over the years. So we talk about insulin resistance. We talk about different topics like that. So that clinical program is been doing that several years now, and that's going really well. And I've got several people who've gone through that program that are practicing out in the world and seeing clients here and there. And I think that that's an important piece that, people need. We need to have herbalists that are seeing clients too, that really can help people in their community, or people that are opting out of the mainstream medicine, being able to come to somebody and actually really getting some support in some way. And I think there's a pretty steep learning curve with that, but I'm trying to support people moving through that learning curve. So that's one of the level 2 programs. And the other level 2 program that I have is an apprenticeship program, and it's a teaching apprenticeship, where during COVID, we weren't, in the very beginning, you remember, we weren't allowed to meet in groups of over 10 outdoors.
I remember that.
Yeah. And, I had 30 people enrolled in this school, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I just called in the forces, and I had some former students come and help me teach. So we would divide the class into groups. I think I actually more than 30 people. We divided the class into smaller groups, and we just tag teamed the teaching, and it worked really well. It's really nice to have small groups sometimes when you're looking at plants up close and things like that. So the teaching apprenticeship has become part of the school as well, and that's a level 2. And so we do, we spend a lot of time together preparing for the outdoor classes. And then, of course, teaching the outdoor classes. And also, like, for instance, this year, we're going to read a couple books together and study some other authors and herbalists, and have that be incorporated into the program as well. So, yeah, so then there's some level 2. I think there's a level 3, which is just like a roundtable that I'm starting this year, roundtable clinical. At some point, I'm going to run out of time, but.
Sure. Before my next question, I was curious, what are some of those books that you're going to be reading with each other?
Yeah. So this year, the level 2 apprenticeship, we're going to be reading Kat Meyer's Herbal Energetics, I believe is the name of it.
Energetic Herbalism, actually, I think.
Thank you. I didn't have it planned. Energetic Herbalism. And I'm excited because she's going to be coming to town in November, and hopefully I get to, we're going to try to figure something out. And then the second book is the Curanderex Toolkit by Atava Garcia, and her last name. Thank you for pronouncing that for me. And I was really happy because I got to meet her this weekend at the Good Medicine Confluence. A lot of my students were there, and we all met her, and we're all really, we're like, come to Austin. So those are the 2 books we're going to read over the course of the year and really kind of dive into a little bit more.
That's awesome. Yeah. Shout out Kat Meyer. She's amazing. And Atava actually has one of our top videos on the Herb Rally YouTube channel called The History of Mexican Herbalism. So yeah, that'd be awesome if she visited you. I can't remember off the top of my head where she lives. But right on. Well,
You think I know? I do know. I just can't think of it off the top of my head right now either.
Right. Well, yeah. Oh, that's right. I was going to ask you this. So it sounds like you're a clinical herbalist. You've got a lot going on with your school. You run Texas Medicinals. I always want to say tincture line, but you probably make a bunch of medicine. How do you juggle it all?
How do I juggle it all?
That's a lot.
Right. Yeah, well, really, it's the clinical work that takes third seat or whatever. The clinical work that me actually seeing clients is the part that I don't get to as much as the three hats. It's a lot.
Sure.
So one thing, honestly, that I've been wanting to do is I'm looking to sell the Texas Medicinals line. I've been doing that medicine making for 24 years, and I feel like it's time to pass that torch on to somebody else so that I can move my focus of attention over to more clinical work. Also, there's a book that's happening and that I am working on right now, actually, and I'd really like to spend some more time doing that. So I am trying to, I'm looking for the right buyer for Texas Medicinals as we speak. But yeah, how do I juggle it all? Well, my kid's grown up, so they're out of the home. They're 22, so I'm not full-time mothering anymore, and it's a lot, but I also have an amazing assistant. So Lauren Peterson started with the school probably about 10 years ago, 8 or 9 or 10 years ago. She took the level 1 program, and then she stuck around and just started working for me. And she's been working for me ever since. And, there's a lot of what I do that I couldn't do without Lauren. So big shout out to Lauren Peterson for running the school. I just do the teaching.
I'll second that. I mean, I'll occasionally, when I engage with different herbalists, some herbalists will have assistants like Lauren and whatnot. And I could just tell that she is very organized and on top of it. And what an incredible help. So I'm glad you shouted her out, because you are juggling a lot. But I'll just say this: when you're ready to say sell Texas Medicinals, if you ever want Herb Rally to say like, put it out there like on the newsletter if you want, but are you looking to maybe sell more like one-to-one?
It's for sale right now.
Okay. Do you want us to put it out there, or would you rather?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I'll get the info from you after the call, but well, that's exciting. That's got to feel like a big relief if you're able to do it.
Well, I will do it. I don't know how long it's going to take. I've had a lot of interest. It's really just finding the right match. It's exciting because I'm just I'm at an age where it feels like a very natural flow to shift things around. That feels like the right thing to be doing right now. So it's no like big major there's nothing wrong. It's more like really trying to go with the energies that I feel around me, which is like, oh yeah, it's time to move this to someone who is a little bit who can take it and run with it in a way that I haven't been able to, because I'm running a school at the same time, so.
Absolutely. Are you allowed to tell us what your book is about yet, or what it's called?
I don't have a title for it yet, but I have several working titles, I guess, in my head, but really it's a book about the medicinal plants of Texas that I work with. And I'm trying to, of course, the minute you make that list of what plants you want to talk about or what plants I want to write about, the list turns into this huge list, 200 plants. And I have to figure out, well, is that what it's going to be, or is it going to be shorter? It's probably going to be shorter. How can I leave anything out? I can't leave that little sweet one out, so I'm working with a book writing coach and an editor to see, how this is going to pan out. But, it's about the plants that it's an herbal. It's about the plants that grow around here.
I just had an idea for you. You could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Call it whatever you're going to call it, and then just call it volume 1. And then you don't have to worry about the other plants, because you'll just get in the next volume.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, and it's kind of related to what we're doing, because we're kind of scheming on a book too, and we're like, oh, we'll just do a volume 1 because we know we want to do more. So All right. Well, you've got a lot of plants you want to talk about, but I asked you if there were any plants you wanted to talk about for the show, and you were easily able to narrow it down to two. It seemed like, at least. Do you want to teach the Herb Rally audience a bit about peach?
I love peach leaf. So here I am. I'm in Central Texas. It's going to be 100 degrees today. That's like, that's
Wow.
it's 100 all the time right now,
Wow.
Climate change, all that stuff, all that good stuff. And, I learned peach from Kiva Rose. And I know that it's a traditional Southern remedy. I know that Phyllis D. Light has spoken about it and uses it quite a lot. Matthew Wood also does. But I really learned about it from Kiva. And just that, I went to harvest it the other day, and it was really hot out. I had to wait. I needed to wait till like 7 p.m. to go to my friend's house to harvest her peach leaves because it was too hot. I wasn't going to go. I don't go out during the day sometimes. And I didn't really want to leave my house. I don't like driving. I was going to have to drive home at night. Wasn't really excited about that. I was really grumpy and irritated and annoyed. And, here is I'm going to get to go do this lovely thing, which is harvest peach leaf. But I felt all these feelings. And that's so typical of like what peach is for. Peach is for the irritated, annoyed, inflamed. So it's not just it's the emotions, right? So feeling annoyed and irritated by the heat emotionally, and feeling annoyed and irritated and inflamed by the heat physically. So I do use it both ways, both as a physical remedy to deal with feeling overheated, having an upset stomach that's related to heat, topical skin things, of course, that are related to heat, whether that be, venomous insect bites that get inflamed, things like that. And then also just the overwhelm of having, it's so hot and your mind and your emotions are just can't get over how annoying it is and how desperate it feels and all those kinds of things. So I use peach for that too. I've seen it. It's one of the plants that I see working really in that kind of a magic way that we think of with a lot of plants. Like I have a handful of plants in my head that I've really seen you give somebody one drop and their entire demeanor changes. And peach, I've seen peach do that with people, just one drop. And they're like, oh yeah, that's the one I want. And I've seen that over and over and over again with peach. I remember this young woman came in to see, her mom brought her in and she had Lyme disease. And while I don't have a lot of experience with Lyme, I was wanting to help her in whatever way I could. And she was very unhappy. This young woman was very unhappy. I think she'd been to lots of doctors. I think she felt very hopeless. We tried a lot of different remedies. And the minute I gave her a drop of peach leaf tincture on her tongue, she burst out laughing. Her entire demeanor changed. Yeah. And I've seen it, work in similar, have similar shifts with other people as well. I had another young woman who studied with me for years and years. I mean, I think starting at age 15 or something like that. And she studied with me for at least 3 years. And by the time, before she even went off to college, she knew more than anybody else who'd come through the school because she just kept sticking around. And, she was a young woman at the time, and maybe 16 years old, 17 years old. And there was nothing particularly wrong with them with their, I think they're non-binary now. So nothing particularly wrong with them with their health, but so we were doing a consultation just as practice in the clinical program. And so, like I said, there wasn't much wrong with them, but I gave them one drop of peach and it was just like, that's what they wanted. They just wanted to take peach home. It just made them happy. And so, yeah, I love peach medicine. And especially for us here in Central Texas, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. Mostly what I like to do with it is tincture it. And I tincture it fresh. And that's a really important aspect of peach leaf medicine, which is that you have to tincture it right after harvesting it, because the minute it starts to wilt, the cyanic acids get stronger and the cyanide content or the dangerous aspects of the medicine become more prevalent. I think there's a particular chemical breakdown that I don't have entirely in my head. but I always tincture it right away. And then I also like to make an infused oil of it. And I've seen that work wonders too. So a woman who she had really inflamed skin on her face. She'd been struggling with it for years and years and years, dealing with all sorts of different things. And we put peach leaf salve directly on, or we gave her peach leaf salve. She put it directly on her face. And by the end of class, it was a clinical program. And at the end of class, her face, the redness in her face had greatly, greatly diminished to the extent that we were all just like astonished at the difference that happened within an hour. So I like to infuse it in oil and just the peach leaves as well. So
I love
I also make
that. I just want to say real quick, I love that you're still like astonished when herbs work. It's so cool to hear.
Well, it's so nice when something works so quickly and
Right.
it's such a profound shift,
Totally.
So,
but yeah, carry on. You were going to say something else.
well, I realized I also make an elixir. So, elixirs again is something that I really kind of learned from Kiva. I was inspired by some of the tasty remedies Kiva used to make. I don't know if she's still, I'm sure she's still making them. Yeah. And there was a whole group of us, I think Rebecca Altman used to make a lot of that kind of medicine and still does. She doesn't sell it as much, but and a lot of other folks. And so I was really inspired by those medicine making people. And I started making elixirs myself in the apothecary in the Texas Medicinals. So in the Texas Medicinals line of medicine. And the peach leaf elixir is pretty straightforward. Here's the secret recipe. It's just I tincture fresh peach leaves and brandy. And then I add a little honey after, so it's nice, right? Because we know how tinctures can taste so strong. Sometimes it's nice to have something just with a little tinge of honey, little tinge of sweetness in an alcohol that's not as offensive as, 190 proof ethanol. So.
Right. Are you ever using the fruit when you make medicine or the pit or anything like that? Or it's strictly the leaves?
Sometimes I throw the pit in, but because I'm making it for the shelf, I've kind of leaned more towards just leaves with some twigs, but I just kind of leave the pit out because it gets a little problematic just in terms of intensity and strength. I don't want to have to say, oh, be careful, don't take too much of this. I think if you're working with the leaves and the bark, there's not really an upper limit is not, I don't really know of an upper limit of how much to take, whereas the pit's just a little bit stronger. So I leave it out. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for teaching us. Yeah, I don't think there's anything much better than a beautifully ripe peach. Does Texas have an abundance of peaches?
Oh my gosh. Well, we do, it's obviously not a native plant here, but we do grow peaches here. So yeah. That's people, awesome. I can find peach trees pretty easily from friends. I think I used to put the peaches in, but I had this experience at my old house in Austin where I had some volunteer peach trees in the backyard. I had 2 or 3 of them. And at first I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that the squirrels had planted them, but we never got any fruit. And the squirrels would come and they would eat a bite out of each little peach when it was green and then throw it to the ground. And, it was really frustrating, but I realized that I was getting what I needed from the plant, which was the leaves and the bark, and the squirrels were getting to eat the fruit. And then when I really thought about it, I realized that those squirrels might be looking at me like, hey, lady, this is, my great grandmother planted this for me. This tree belongs to us,
Yeah. What are you doing with our leaves?
It's because that's what happened. One of the squirrels planted those, so somebody's great grandmother planted that tree for them.
That's really cute. I love that. Well, why don't we shift gears to a plant that I don't know anything about? I don't even think I've heard of it until I was perusing your Instagram page, but it's called Mexican hat. And it looks like the genus is Ratibida.
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 I like to say Ratibida. Of course, with Latin, you can pronounce it however you want, but sure. Ratibida seems to flow off the tongue. Ratibida columnaris, I believe, is a species that we use. And the common name is Mexican hat. And I know typically we like to, avoid names that reference different ethnicities or cultures or things like that. But at the same time, when I've kind of continued to use the name Mexican hat because it really defines the plant for people in Central Texas. The minute I say Mexican hat, they know exactly what plant I'm talking about. It's an Asteraceae, coneflower. It's essentially a coneflower. So if I were to call it like prairie coneflower or something, it could be confused. Meisha, it doesn't, nobody knows what I'm talking about. Whereas there's something important to me about being able to call it Mexican hat and have people in my community go, that's what I'm taking. That's the medicine you just gave me. It's very, it helps connect them to the land and to the ecosystem. So Ratibida, it's a kind of a coneflower, and I have a lot of it growing wild on my property out here in the country, and it sneaks its way into the garden as well. The part of the plant that I use mostly is the root. And I believe I first learned this from Seven Song years and years and years ago, where he talked about Ratibida, where you can use the flowering top for headaches, the middle foliage for stomach aches because it's bitter, and then the roots for sleep. And the first time I ever harvested it, what I was struck with was how it smells like valerian to me. So I have never really looked in to see whether the constituents are the same as with valerian, but certainly the medicinal effects are the same as valerian. And I've seen it now with the amount of it that I sell and resell, people come back for more of it because it really, really works really well to help you with sleep. So that's the main part of the plant that I use. I think it's a really reliable sleep aid, really very, very reliable. So I love it. And it's pretty prolific here. And especially if you have a garden next to your meadow and it just creeps into the garden, then those are the ones I harvest. But I always have way more than I can ever work with. And I bring my apprentices out, my students come out, everybody manages to harvest some, and there's always more and more. So it's kind of a plant that keeps on giving. Now the flowering head can be used for headaches, and I haven't tried it on its own, so I don't have a lot of stories about it that way. I have one student who really loves using the middle parts, the foliage, as a bitter. She says it's her favorite bitter. So, that's great too. But it's really the roots that have really made their way into my apothecary and into my medicines really quickly, and people really love it. It's very effective.
Fascinating. So I'm going to Google image search this after the call, but what color what color is the coneflower?
So the petals, the ray flowers are like reddish and with some yellow on them, and some dark red. And then the coneflower part, the what do you call it? The disc flowers, they grow up in a conical shape, tall, like maybe an inch tall of a cone. So those are little teeny flowers, right? Those are kind of yellowish or something like that, but it's really that columnar disc flower growth that gives it its name. I guess it looks like the big straw hats. You can get in Mexico. So
I was going to say, you really know your botany. Disc flowers, ray flowers. I love it. We planted some, I want to say it's Rudbeckia, which I adore.
Oh yeah. Closely related.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about. It reminds me of that, but it's really neat that it's an Asteraceae plant family, and you're using the roots as a sleep aid. So you're tincturing the roots then?
Yeah.
And nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I tincture the roots. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I hope a lot of the Herb Rally audience just learned about a new plant. That's definitely a new one for me. And you sell that through your Texas Medicinals line?
Yeah, I think we sell it straight as a single, and then also I make a Mexican hat sleep aid that's got some other good stuff in it that I don't know off the top of my head, but that's what I use. We sell a lot of that too. Yeah, it's really interesting how it's taken off really quickly once we started preparing it and putting a label on it.
Totally.
It must be working because people like it a lot. Yeah.
I also wanted to say I appreciate you bringing up the fact that the reason why you still call it Mexican hat, because when I said it out loud, I was like, oh, I don't know if I should be saying this or whatever, but
right.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually I might change my mind, but I think for right now, it actually really does help people connect it to they're like, I know that plant, So I think that in terms of, one of my long-term goals is, or my all-time goals, is to help people connect back to the earth.
Amen.
Or to feel connected to the earth. And so if that name helps them notice that they're, like, oh, I know that plant, and wow, this plant really helps me sleep. I think that's a good thing. I can be talked out of it, but for right now, seems okay.
I like that about you, Ginger. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm always open to changing my mind and just improving as a human being here. So you're an inspirational herbalist to me. You do a lot. You're a medicine maker. You've got a line. You got a school. I'm just curious if you have any advice for, say, a beginning herbalist. Like, what advice would you give to someone who would like to be, say, a quote unquote herbalist?
Well, I think once we talk about the green path, and once you step on this green path, once you make that first move to decide to start working with the plants and learning from the plants, that everything you need will come. And I feel often that all of the good things in my life are through the grace of the plants, because, when you align yourself with something as good as this, and you're walking that path that is in stewardship to the earth, in stewardship to the plants, and in commitment to community care, it will lead you the right way. So I think trusting your heart, trusting that if you chose this path chose you to stay on that path. I think that, there were years where, I wasn't making any money at all. And I'm sure still plenty of herbalists out there not making any money as herbalists, but it's like, we still keep doing it because this is what we chose to. There's no choice. It's like, I'm not going to stop being an herbalist just because, this little avenue didn't work out. It's like, okay, well, what can I do instead? So I think just sticking to it and not worrying about it not leading somewhere good, because it definitely will. It will all be good. There's nothing negative about this path. It's everything beautiful. Everything you could ever want is on this path. I think that just being creative and finding your way by finding your particular niche is an important way to think about it. So, you don't have to do all the things. You don't have to make all the medicine and teach all the classes and see all the clients. People with different backgrounds, bringing their own strengths to this path, can combine what they used to do with now what they want to do, and have, specialties that are unique and special to them within their community. And at the end of the day, even if you're just doing the same thing that quote unquote you're not doing anything particularly niche-y, you're just being an herbalist. There's that quote, I don't even know where this quote is from, but there are people's lives that only you can touch, right? So, if you're seeing clients or talking to people about herbs or selling herbal medicine at the farmer's market or whatever, there are people that you're going to be able to help that only you could be able to help. So there's always room for more herbalists, always. And every opportunity that we have to be able to teach other people about the plants that grow around us is profound. So even if it's just, you're with a family member and you're like, oh yeah, this plant, and you pick it up and you chew on it or whatever, like every little inroad we make with people to show them that the natural world is where all of our security lies. It's where everything good lies, and that we are inherently part of that world. Like, we're not separate from it. It's not dangerous. I mean, there's things in it, of course, that, we're not going to eat poison hemlock, but that it's not inherently dangerous. It's actually the safest place for us in a lot of ways. I just want people just to keep going, take it and run with it. Learn everything you can, carry your field guide around in your back pocket at all times.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I asked, and I borderline wish I saved that question for last, but it's okay. I just thought that was so well put, and I have to agree with you. Once I was on, the green path, as you called it, there was no turning back, and throughout the years,
Right.
I've seen so many people pursue this green path and find success in their own ways, whether that's financial or just spiritual or just general fulfillment. I've seen countless people in my cohort, if you will, just continue along this path and be successful in their own right. So I'm so glad you phrased it that way.
It's also such a deep dive into our ancestors and our ancestral lineage. I see that a lot here in Central Texas with indigenous communities and Mexican American communities, Chicano communities, and how that the resurgence of this kind of healing work is just growing and growing and growing. It's incredible. I get I get goosebumps when I see it and when I think about it. But then for me, as with European ancestry, thinking about, my history, this is something that I learned from Atava, who wrote the Current Directs Toolkit. And she was talking about her deep dive into her dual ancestry of indigenous Mexican and Polish. And I think that that's really useful for everybody, whether you know exactly what your ancestry is and you have access to those plants, or whether you need to do that deep dive, because again, it reminds us that all of us are alive because our ancestors worked with medicinal plants. Like, there's no two ways about that. Everybody on earth has, everybody who came before us within, a couple of generations used medicinal plants, worked with medicinal plants. So we've all got that in our DNA. And that's a whole beautiful area of personal exploration. But I do see it being really political. Like, I see this in a really beautiful way, right? Of building community and reclamation and continued resistance and just empowerment in the folks around here in Central Texas. I love it. I love it.
Amen. What is the Austin herb community like? It seems like it's thriving. I visited Austin, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, and we hung out with Jesus Garcia.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm kicking myself because I'm like, shit, I should have visited Ginger too. Whoops.
Oh, man.
We'll hit you up on the next time. But what's the Austin herb community like? Seems like that's a huge city and a very like fun, righteous city. So yeah, what's going on over there?
Yeah. So, during COVID, I moved out of the city. So I'm out in the country right now, but still very deeply connected to Austin. I still love Austin. The herb community in Austin is, continually growing, right? So Nicole Telkish has a school, Wildflower School, even though she's in the Pacific Northwest a lot right now. But so her school has been here for years. Ellen Zimmerman had Easy Herbs, or Austin School of Herbal Studies. She was probably the first herb teacher here in Austin who actually had a school name. Marika also teaches one-on-one, I think, with people, and she's been doing that forever. She's a woman of Indigenous heritage here in Central Austin. And so there's a lot of people coming through. And then, of course, I've got my school and a lot of people coming through. Sam Kaufman used to be out here in the Hill Country as well. So there's a lot of people who know about herbs now. There's several herb stores in Austin. There's herb stores out in the various smaller towns out in the country. I think it's, we've also got the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, which is, there's a focus in Austin and in Central Texas on native plants, and as opposed to, just landscape plants and stuff like that. And so that adds a whole nother level of, I think, appreciation for the wild stuff. Yeah. And I think, that's what I like, is the wild stuff. I also use cultivated stuff for sure, but I like the wild stuff a lot. So I think that we have a lot of interest in this kind of thing. There's permaculture organizations as well as people learning permaculture. There's a food forest that was established about 10 years ago in East Austin that's just thriving, and now they teach herb classes there. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn about plants here and how to work with them as medicine. Jesus, I see him doing stuff all over town. I just met him just a few months ago, and I see him everywhere now. I'm like, what are you doing? This is amazing. he's doing stuff. One of my former students, Red Hawk, John Gutierrez, he's doing platicas and different kind of community get-togethers and things like that, where they're doing plant healings and community organizing and amazing things. So there's some really, really beautiful things happening here.
Yeah, you were saying you were just you were on Rosalie De La Forêt's podcast, and actually Jesus, I want to say, was the last episode or two with Rosalie as well. So yeah, he really is all over the place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly.
He is all over the place.
Yeah, he was just on the Herbalist Hour as well too. So
he's precious. He's precious. Yeah. What a lovely human. Yeah.
I love him. So, well, let's wrap up with a couple get to know Ginger questions here. Also, I haven't mentioned this yet. Your website is gingerwebb.com. That's web with two B's. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes and the YouTube description and whatnot. And that's where you can find Texas Medicinals, although that's pending, she's trying to sell it. So, and then also the Sacred Journey School is there as well. So gingerwebb.com. And let's do a let's get deep Friends Edition question. I don't know what this is. It's just going to be a random question.
Oh my God.
I know.
Oh no.
Oh, this is an easy enough one. Don't be worried. When you were a kid, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
I thought I was going to be an artist.
Oh. Do you still do any art?
Well, it's interesting. That was one of the things that I was like, if I sell Texas Medicinals, I'll have time to make things again that aren't just always making medicine all the time.
Right.
And so I decided, well, I was going to be an artist. And then when I didn't think I was going to do that, then I was going to be a writer. And those are the two things that I want to pick back up again when I kind of move Texas Medicinals along to somebody else and let them run with it. And I'll have a little bit space in my life, is to start making things again, doing crafty things and writing the book. So for instance, I started knitting again the other day.
Nice.
And I started braiding a rug the other day. And so those are my home craft things that I was like, well, I'm just going to start doing this. I just haven't had time, is what it feels like. The exciting thing is that my daughter is an artist. So, I obviously made enough space in their life that they were able to just take that on and decide to do that. And so now they've been studying and making art since they were little, and now they're applying their art into doing tattoo work. So they're working with a tattoo artist and doing incredible botanical stuff on
I was going to ask about that.
And yeah, really cool. It's really cool. A lot of my students end up getting tattoos from Chia. It's really cool.
Their name is Chia.
Yeah.
That's so neat. My daughter's middle name is Sage, so another salvia, if you will.
All the little plant kids.
So yeah, exactly. So that's so cool that they're doing tattoos. I'll announce it here on the Herb Rally podcast. I'm getting a dandelion tattoo on my forearm here soon. So I'm super stoked for that. Yeah. Awesome. Well, actually, the other question that I've been liking to ask the herbalist is any random hobbies of yours. But it sounds like you kind of just answered that.
Well, okay, let me just tell you about this rug braiding situation. So this braid in rug, I learned it from TikTok. This lady,
I love it.
Wanson's Fabrics, and it's like you rip up old sheets you get at the thrift store, and then you just braid them together by hand. So my rug is about it's about 2 feet wide now. I'm obsessed. So that's my new hobby.
Good for you. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Well, let's wrap up with I've been asking this question at the end of the show. What keeps you learning and growing in the field of herbalism?
Oh my gosh, it's my students all the time. It's always my students, because I want to give them everything. I want to teach them everything. And so, you said that about that I know my botany. It's like, well, I've learned my botany. I learn my botany every year. I get better and better and better at it, because I want to be able to teach them the botany better and better and better. And the same with all aspects of herbalism. That's what keeps me motivated, is like, I want to make sure they know even more than I do. So I try to, I'm always joking with my apprentices, is that, sometimes we're just like one step ahead of them. Let's learn something new so we can teach it to our students. And then that's how I stay motivated. Yeah.
I love that. That's a great answer. It's been a joy getting to know you, Ginger. Again, that's gingerwebb.com. That's web with 2 B's. Do you have any final words or programs you want to plug or anything like that?
Oh, I just love what you're doing, Mason. I just want to appreciate you and Herb Rally. I think it's so, ever since meeting you, it's like I've been watching you do Herb Rally and, create community in the herbal community, within the herbal community, or bring people together more. And so I just want to give a shout out to you and your podcast.
Thank you, Ginger. Oh, I love that. I'm doing my best over here. And you were mentioning earlier in the show, you were talking about, say, niches in the herbal community and how to find your way and whatnot. And I feel like Herb Rally is kind of my offering to the herbal community. I'm not a clinical herbalist. I'm not a medicine maker per se. But I like sharing the herbal community with everybody. And that's I think my role. So thank you for the appreciation. And it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks y'all for listening. Thanks, Ginger, and all the links and whatnot will be in the show notes. We'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care. Hey everyone, this is Mason with Herb Rally. Thanks so much for watching today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and also go ahead and subscribe. We come out with new herbal content each and every week. If you didn't know, Herb Rally also lists Herbalism events. We list Herbalism events chronologically. We list them also by state. So you can just go ahead and search by Oregon or Wisconsin or wherever you live. You can find out what herbalism events are happening in your neck of the woods. We also list herbalism events, virtual herbal events. So if you can't make it to an in-person conference or plant walk, we list lots of virtual events as well. To find out more, you could go to herbrally.com/events or herbrally.com/virtual. But if you can help it, I would highly recommend trying to go to an herbalism conference. Those are some of the best learning experiences I've ever had, and that's where you can find different herbal teachers, and then maybe you could perhaps take their apprenticeship. But yeah, just do what you can. Get out there and learn about the herbs, like yarrow, dandelion, corn, all the above, like all the medicinal herbs. And we'll see you out there. Hope to see you at an herb conference. All right, bye.